Hi. Who knows who Seymourpowell are? Can I have a show of hands? Because this is always interesting, because half and half normally. Yeah, it's about half and half. So essentially we're a 30-year-old product design agency. Our work was born in product design. There was a TV series on Channel 4 back in the early 90s called Better by Design, which Dick and Rich, our co-founders, kind of hosted, where they designed things like a new bra, a new toilet seat, a new motorbike, that kind of thing. But we also work in packaging, right from sort of Lynx deodorant can that you may know, both the iterations, the twisty one, that's us, but right up through to the stuff that we get to work on, which is the sort of transport end. This is a really old bit of visualization, so apologies for the quality, but this is kind of 15 years old now, so we helped define the interior design of the Virgin Galactic spaceship. Worked with Virgin on that, and along with some of their aircraft interiors. It looks kind of pretty bad now, I must say, so I might skip on. But we've been playing with this kind of visualization for many years, for nearly 2 decades. We also did the world's first hydrogen fuel cell motorbike, which you may recognize. This is also 15 years old, kind of before my time, but it still kind of looks quite modern, we think. You can take the fuel cell out and power other things with that. But a lot of the stuff we do these days is helping big companies like Hitachi define the future of what they do. And this is a piece of work we did for them. These 3 little robots. You've got a little lead man who kind of skits around and you follow and rounds your children up if you lose them in an airport. And you've got carry man who, as you can imagine from the name, carries your bags, and info man. So this is the kind of work we do these days with these big companies, you know, to kind of define what they're going to be doing in the next 5 to 10 years. So this is actually closer than you think, this kind of stuff. They're working on the prototypes of the little gyroscopic robots at the moment, so they're going to be kind of working in a kind of concept form soon. So that's a little bit about what we do. This is a motorbike we've just done for a Korean company. I'm just going to whip through this stuff because obviously you want to see the VR, right? That's what you're here for. This is a train we've just finished, which is going to be running on the tracks in Norway very shortly. And James, I'm going to get you to come up now because this is going to be my button pusher, who's called Huckleberry because of how short his trousers are, as you can see. So we're going to switch computers now, and I'm going to just go straight into the VR demo for you. So what I'm going to aim to do is design a car in front of you. What could possibly go wrong, right? But it's kind of the best way to show the software that we've developed. That looks a bit... In the meantime, I'll give you a bit of background. So, as the guys have already spoken about, the VR systems have become much more available and much cheaper. And as a design company, obviously, as soon as we could, we got straight on there and grabbed the first cheapest system we could, which was the HTC at the time. We've got Oculus and stuff as well, but we feel like this is the most stable for what we're trying to do. The first time I jumped in and used, has anybody put your hands up if you've used Google's tilt brush? You know, the painting in free space. So as soon as I got in there and had a go on that, I was literally came out of that thing shaking. I was like, this is it. This is exactly what I need to do my job properly. You know, this is I can draw cars, motorbikes, anything, plain interiors in full scale in front of me. I mean, it was a bit kind of, you know, made out of stars and flames. So it wasn't quite appropriate. And we had a tech event at work, and my digital team guy was there, and he said, well, I could actually hack this tool. I could hack Google's tilt brush, and we could change it and make it into something that's much more appropriate. A couple of weeks later, we kind of decided that it was more legal and probably more beneficial to us to do something that's completely from scratch and that's our own. You know, the first thing I should say is that we're not a software company. For those of you who know us, we're definitely a design company. We have created this bit of software, and we do create quite a few bespoke sort of VR experiences for big companies, but we're definitely not, you know, a big sort of Autodesk type company. So this is something that we've started playing with, and we've got it to this point now where we're kind of ready to start sharing it. I've got some demos that I'm going to be giving out in the next few weeks to some of the guys that I see in here, some of my buddies. But we're also going to let you guys have a go at it in a room just up around the corner. So I'll show you that at the end. Huckleberry here is going to run the switches. He's got some view options in the corner. Leave the JPEG for now. I'll just get straight in there and start drawing something. Don't judge me, because I drew this sketch that we're going to load in a moment on the train on the way up yesterday. So it's probably not the best car design, you'll see. So the space, we spent quite a lot of time actually thinking about kind of color and size of the space. This is actually a similar size to the room that we use this system in every day at the office in London. So acoustically, it feels quite different to do this here, because obviously I can hear myself for a start. But also it's a massive room. So ideally I'd change the VR space to the space that we're stood in now. So what else you can see is it's green, obviously. The lines that I draw are a complementary color to that, so they really stand out. I've got this board in the corner here, which I can teleport over to, which I've got some functions on. But one of the main reasons for this board is actually to just kind of stop me getting lost in the space, because it's quite easy when you're stood in this room to not really know exactly where you are unless you start creating stuff. So James is going to load my sketch in, which should pop up on the wall in front of me. There it is. So the first thing I can do is stick in just a thumbnail sketch that I've done. Now, for me, when I first did that, that was quite powerful stuff, because I've been in studios where we're printing out huge pictures of side views of cars, or creating tape drawings for a couple of days. And in here, I can get that little sketch that was about this big, pop it on the wall, use this measurement tool. I've got a half scale, full scale, which is quite hard to see from where you are, but if you have a go, you'll understand that. So if I pop in what I know to be around 4.5 meters, I can then grab this sketch and just scale it roughly. And we think that this system's not a very precision tool at the moment. We don't think VR is quite ready to do really, really precise stuff. But I can roughly scale that sketch to what I know is about right for a sort of, GT car. So that's just as a start. I've got a nice space. I've got my picture on the wall. I can go over to this guy and I can start thinking about taking some of the lines off this sketch. Now, the tools I've got in my right hand are all the drawing tools. In my left hand, this is all navigation. So if I point at the floor, you'll see that I've been doing this already, but I can teleport around the space. I can also scale myself, essentially. This is full scale, and then I do that, and I'm kind of giant inside the space, and the floor level's here. It just makes it easier to build stuff. I can also load in some preset layers here. So I've got a front-engined, very rough bit of data there, just something that is an underlay. There's a mid-engine one, and there's a couple of other things that I'll move on to. But I'll just pop this in there for now, so I know I've got something that I can play with. But what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start using this sketch here just to take some of those key lines. So if I draw that line there, which looks about right, I can then pick that line up and use this bit of sketch and pop that over the car. Repositioning. I can also scale him if I think he's a bit big, which he looks a bit long to me. And one of the powerful things about this is I can step really, really far away now from that model, if you go into first person Huckleberry. And I can step right out of the room and look at it from really far away, just to check that I'm not doing anything crazy. So in half scale mode, I'm just going to start using that background drawing. I can even do it from here and just putting in a sketch, kind of lining it up. Because I can scale it, it means I can start thinking about where I want to put it. Now these are super rough, really quick sketch tools. And I'm just going to start roughing something in, and we'll get to, if you use the other buttons, James, just so that it doesn't get too crazy to watch. But you can see that my drawing is very different to the way I draw on paper. It's not and if there's any designers in here, you'll know that you get taught to draw small stuff from your fingers, bigger stuff from your wrist. You know, the further up your arm you go, the bigger the curve is, the bigger the sketch line is. Obviously in here, it's kind of a bit dancey, which is why I'm kind of flailing around a bit, but you've got to kind of draw from your feet. And that's a kind of new thing. That's a new way of drawing that you learn pretty quick. I mean, most designers that get in here, in about 10 minutes, they're kind of used to that way of drawing stuff. So constantly stepping back and checking the proportion of it. Just having a little look from the other side, checking it against my sketch. So one of the hard things to do in VR is draw perfect circles. You know the guy on YouTube who does that? I can't do that, put my shoulder out, too old. If you draw a circle like this, I mean, I've used this a lot, you know, and that's reasonably flat, that circle, if you look down from the side view. But you can see that the ends aren't actually joined or anything like that. And in our quest to keep this very simple and keep the sort of cognitive load down so that us dumb designers don't have to think too much when we're doing our job, we want to keep the tools to an absolute minimum. It's about jumping in here, doing quick sketching like you would on a piece of paper, checking them against real bits of data. So we did try and keep it down to, our maximum amount of tools we wanted was 5, and we've actually got it down to 4. One of them is a circle tool. So this is super easy to use. I just pull backwards for bigger, push forwards for smaller. But obviously also I can pick that guy up and scale him anyway. So you can just do it where you feel comfortable and then use it to put on the sketch. I'm going to go a little bit bigger with the wheels because you have to, don't you? So yeah, so I'm going to pop that there, and I can duplicate it just by clicking the trigger while I'm holding it. I'll pop another one there, but what I'm going to do actually is work on this as a separate piece. So this is all at the moment about this big in front of me. It's half scale. So if I go to full scale, if you go to first person again, James, I don't know what you're in at the moment. I'm just going to put a little center in there. Might pick this up and duplicate him. Do a nice little stretched tire. The other thing I can do is group that up. But now I've got a grouped wheel, which I can put anywhere. I might move over into this space over here. And just if I make that really big, then I can start thinking about what I want to do in terms of detail. So it's nice to be able to, I've got things like opacity on this guy, so I can put the opacity right up and have a really big line like this. Or I can pull the opacity down and lower that opacity and just do stuff that's a bit more sketchy. This is quite good for sort of describing surfaces and stuff. But it means that I can then pop in a spoke, super roughly. I'm just going sort of something, that's horrible. So if I pop in a spoke like that and then duplicate him around, you can see just how quickly you've got a kind of deep dish 5-spoke-ish, 4.5 spoke, by the way, I've laid them out. And you see, because that's massive, I can start, if I group him up again, I can actually go even bigger. It's not often you get to stand there and make a wheel 5 times bigger than it needs to be, just so that you can draw a little detail on the spoke that you might want. Let's put some sort of little vent in. Group that. Group those two. See, he's a bit big. I can't reach that spoke now. But you can see just how quick it is to get something. It must look mental flailing around. Hopefully you're watching the screen, not me. And then I can obviously pull that down to the right size and come over and pop him on the car. And it's that easy to start detailing things up. I might use those original circles as a kind of guide for where the wings might be. And the same thing, you know, with the bodywork. Often I'm drawing lines anywhere and just picking that thing up and using it wherever I feel necessary. So I can just come over here. That is an awful banana line, but I'm going to go half scale again and just rough in something down here at the skirt. I might even use that same line again here to start describing some of that side stuff. I mean, being able to stand inside your sketch is quite a powerful thing in itself. I can even sit down in the driving seat, and then, James, if you pop on number 4, I think it is. No, number 3, sorry. So in front of me there, I've got a standard US traffic light, which means that I can work out exactly where this headlining needs to go. This is stuff that I would completely ignore if I'm doing a sketch like I've done on the wall here, because it's just stuff that you don't think about until later on. And normally, you see these beautiful bits of artwork, these lovely sketches that the designers have done, and then by the time the production car comes out, it's been beaten up, right? It looks horrendous because of all these other factors, like headlight height, for instance. If you pop on number 4. So on here, I've got this is the leading edge of what you need to have for crash, and then these are just a quick visualization of the maximum height of the front headlights and minimum height of the front headlights. So I know that I can pop in a headlight here, just as a marker, and I know that later on in the process, if I keep to these proportions, then I should end up with something that can go to production and be sort of semi-legal. My sort of car design brain wants to put those lights super low on the floor, but the reality is you need to sort of start thinking of this stuff, and the earlier you do, the more you can streamline this process. The more likely you are to get your work to actually go through. I don't like this original line, actually, so I'm going to do that again. So if you just turn number 4 off again. Hup. Thanks, mate. So starting to sort of just describe this banana GT, as we'll call it. Ooh. And you can see that I mean, how long have I been doing this? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? Within sort of 10 minutes, you can get a form that you might want to start looking at in CAD. Change that nose a bit, that's pretty bad. I'm going to obviously have to do the back. But these lines that I'm doing here, as the guys alluded to earlier, to keep the games software that we use, which is Unity, that this has been built in, to keep that working properly, you need to keep the stuff you're doing quite light in terms of data. So these are actually the heaviest thing that we're creating in this system. So they're run to keep them to be sort of accurate like this. They have to reference a lot of points along this line. So what I need to do to get the data out of this is actually rebuild on top of these lines with a different tool, which is the Spline Curve tool, which any CAD modelers in here will recognize. Just put a couple more lines in. I'll try not to get too obsessed with the actual design of it. I can't help it, I'm afraid. So this tool here, the Spline Curve tool, you can pull in a straight line like this, and just starting to rebuild over the top of the sketch lines. One of the most powerful things about this system is you can pick up 2 points at once, and then you can place that curve while assessing it from all the different angles around it. So I can pick that guy up as a whole curve as well and drop another one. In fact, I can even sort of bow and arrow him. So putting curves in 3D space is something you learn quite quickly if you're learning sort of Alias or one of those systems. But actually, to a layman, to someone who's never been in Alias before, they can jump in here and start putting these curves in a very sort of natural, easy-to-do way without having any CAD training whatsoever. So old school designers like me, who like to sketch and don't do a lot of CAD, can really quickly build a curve set that I know is sort of referenced. What am I standing on? Is referencing some of the rules that I need to think about later on, but is also, it's referencing the engineering data, which is underneath these seats, the engine block. I know that I've been inside it, so I know that I can see out of it and look up at traffic lights, which is some of the stuff that determines all that is the 14-degree angles of complicated rules that you don't need to know about as long as you can see it. And we think that there's power in kind of gamifying this whole process. So being able to have fun while you're doing it is going to help me actually listen to the rules, look at the rules, understand that I need to put the headlights in the right place. Let's do something with the grille. You know, and if I'm having fun while I'm doing it, I'm actually going to, you know, stick to the rule book. Getting the books out and on your desk and cycling through and remembering exactly where the front of the car needs to hit a pedestrian is just something that I'm never going to do. Which is why most sketches all the wheels are a bit too big. You know, all the proportions are a bit overblown, because on a piece of paper that looks great, but in reality when you walk around it, you need to be able to understand, so I click this button, exactly how these lines relate to each other. Now, they're not very accurate, and we don't think they need to be, because you don't want to spend the amount of time you would spend in a CAD package inside VR, because as you may have noticed, it does send you a bit mad. But it kind of messes with your eyes a bit, and you get motion sickness and stuff like that. We think that sort of half an hour is about as long as you really want to spend at the moment in these systems. So any longer than that, you're going to feel a bit sick. You don't want to spend 7.5 hours a day building surfaces in here, checking them. You can do that on your screen, bring them back in here and check them. So if I turn on, for instance, we loaded something in on layer number 5. It's called Dachshund, mainly because I was looking at buying one and I wanted to have a look what it looked like. You know, this kind of level of visualization is enough, really, to sort of say, imagine that this is a piece of data that's based on the curve set that I've just created. I can start sort of, you know, making notes. This is also linked up to the internet, so that Chris up in Scotland, who coded all this for me, we did it together within the VR space over the internet. So he comes in as like a big ball head. He's got like little pointy hands, which is quite cool. But it means you can do those design reviews that the other guys were talking about. So I could sort of say, you know, let's move this. I can write a note or whatever. But I can also, you know, I'm not going to start changing this Dachshund because it's cool. But you can start saying, well, maybe we put the lights here instead. I'll just turn that off. So it's pretty powerful stuff to be able to walk around a car. I quite like those extra rally lights. Walk around a car after, you know, within 10 minutes, you're already in 3D. Normally, to get to this point where you're looking at the stance and proportion of something, it's taken, you know, 10 guys, 6 months, and however many millions of pounds to build a big clay model before you even get to do this. So to be able to do this at this sketch stage is pretty powerful. So, like I was alluding to, the yellow lines are a bit too heavy to export out, and actually we don't think there's massive value in exporting these sort of details on the wheels and stuff. I think those things can be modeled in later. But the white lines, you know, these are ones that you do want to be able to take out and put into a package like Alias. So if I just finish a couple of lines on the back here. How are we doing for time, Huckleberry? These guys probably want lunch. So if I just pop in a few extra lines, just so I've got something that doesn't look too crazy, and then if I clear that sketch, you'll see that I've got a set of the key lines for a proportion of a car. Now, James, if you click on the Seymourpowell logo at the bottom, that brings up our menu at the top of the page. It's quite hot in there, by the way. So what I can now do, you see I've got a Z up. For those of you that do a lot of modeling, you'll know that Alias runs Z up. So if I can export those curves, we'll call it banana car. And we'll put it on the desktop. Now if I just open Alias, because that's exported as a step file, I've never done this live, by the way, so it probably won't work. Let's see. Shazam. It's working. Is it working? So we've got what looks like a messy set of curves in there. But if I mirror those, now I've got those set of curves in Alias, ready to be worked on. Now, as you know, they're not very accurate, and they're not linked to anything, but what they are is a really great mark in the sand. And it's, you know, at this stage already, you've got a set of curves in Alias that you've walked around, that you've sat inside, and that's powerful stuff, you know, for a car designer. You know, the motorbikes we do at work, I can do sort of 10 in half an hour at full scale, and yeah, if you could walk into our studio and you see me doing this, it's because I am literally checking the ergonomics of a motorbike. We've got a couple of little blocks of wood that we put in there that are different heights depending on the bike we're working on. And you know, it's kind of revolutionizing what we do. It's from necessity for us because we're a little design studio in a big design studio, I guess, but a smaller space than an OEM, so we don't have huge clay plates. We need to be able to get into 3D as quick as possible and validate what we're doing. So essentially, that is the demo over. If any of you guys want to come and have a go, we are in room, I can't remember what the name of it is, it's a real catchy name, OC1.08. It's that guy around the corner. So if you come out these doors, it's kind of just around there on the right. But come and have a go, because it's much more powerful stuff when you're inside there and you have a proper look at what you're doing. But that's it. That's me. Huckleberry, everyone. Huckleberry. Thanks.